What's up, everyone? I wanted to invite you to watch this side project I've been working on. It's a workplace comedy filmed entirely on Zoom. See if that's a horrible idea or not. I have a lot of talented writers, comics, actors, editors. A lot of people put a lot of work into this, so please check it out. It's selling in. Find it on Facebook, video, and YouTube.
All right, so in the Backseat Boys shoot interview, Trent Acid mentions that one day he happened to fuck a lady friend of his in the CZW school ring. So Jake, I gotta ask, have you ever had sex in the wrestling ring?
I have discussed it. I almost happened, but a bed seemed like a better fucking option.
All the very dangerous springboard finishers you could do.
AJ Styles would nail the fuck out of him.
But here's the thing, what you have to think about is, especially a canvas that's out in a wrestling school, is just a tree of fucking disease climbing. Like, having sex in a park in New Jersey without even putting a blanket down would get you less contaminants than inside of a housed wrestling school on top of a canvas. Like, one thing if it was an actual show ring, that'd be a different story. Like, if it were like a wrestling show. So a wrestling school ring canvas sounds horrible. An actual show ring, you could probably get away with it. The thought has crossed my mind. But at the same time, too, what you have to keep in mind is there was a short period of time where I lived in the highspots.com office. Where I slept was actually inside the wrestling ring.
Oh, wow.
So the only reason I finally broke down and got a house, well, I mean, I was looking for a house, but there's a moment in time like, well, maybe I can just keep being homeless. This ain't bad.
Yeah,
and
save money.
The thing that was the tipping point where, like, man, you really need to get your shit together.
Was your tipping point when you were trying to talk a girl into having sex in a wrestling ring?
Yep, I was just like, how am I going to get women if I don't have a fucking house to bring them to? And then years later, I regretted that decision. I'm like, oh, this is not a good idea. See, I should have done what I'm doing now, where I have a Post-it note hanging up on a mirror that says, love is not for you, just to remind myself, don't get involved in a relationship.
All right, well, this is probably the most perfect lead-in for who we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Welcome to 10 Bell Pod, a wrestling podcast about wrestlers who are now booked in the Outlaw Mud Show in the Sky. I am Nick. Can I say Nick Alexander again, since stand-up comedy is dead and is never coming back? I'm going to take my name back.
I've always put Nick Alexander, especially in the tags for the YouTube, for the sole reason that my hope is that I will have created more tags for Nicholas Alexander attached to something that you've done. So that way when you're like, oh, there's this comedian in Michigan that, like, he went on like 5 festivals. I can't call myself Nick Alexander anymore. And there's this other guy, Nick Alexander, who's in Scottsdale, Arizona, that's done like 8 open mics. I can't call myself Nick Alexander. So that way, the day when you do Google search on Nick Alexander, it all leads back to 10 Bell Pod YouTube videos that you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm now the forefront of Nick Alexander's in the world.
Well, I appreciate you doing that for me. I genuinely do.
Oh, I wasn't doing it for you. I was doing it for me. So I'm just trying to, don't get that confused.
All right, my second fellow podcaster, Micah J. Loving. Say hi, Micah.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good in the Armageddon that we're living in. I've alternated between wishing for my just head to explode, but then also working out for the best I have and probably ever. I've been working out 2 times a day, doing a little jog to start and then working out later as hell comes all around me, and then falling asleep every night to Ken Burns' baseball. So it's been a weird recent couple weeks.
Of course, our third man is Mr. ABC, A always be B, C camping, always be camping, Jake Manning.
Cool, that was an aggressive intro.
Yeah, I know what was behind that with all that ACABB stuff.
Well, and I heard ACB, ABC, and I was just thinking like, oh shit, is he gonna do a Michael Jackson 5 reference that I don't know about?
It was Alec Baldwin, who was also mean to a lot of small children, or is just his daughter, whatever. All right, so just research-wise, it was kind of weird to do this episode after Owen Hart, right? Like, we were watching Brett versus Owen at WrestleMania, and then like a week later, I'm watching shaky fucking VHS handheld recording CZW footage with like a Shinedown song dubbed over it. It was just weird, right?
I mean, a little bit, because it's like, oh, we got this good elaborate story about brother versus brother, loyalty, disrespect, all that. And then we get to CZW, and it's like, which white guy is the angriest?
Zandig. Zandig is the answer every single time because he's the boss. He's the guy who sings the entrance song, too. Oh, yeah! In the blood, how to be, CC2. In the how CC2. In the CCW.
And this is with pictures of like table spots and montages featuring Mussolini and Hitler. So that's
That is no way a knock on the man we're covering today, because he at points in his career, he was arguably the best indie wrestler in the country. He was, of course, tough as hell, hardcore with the best of them. Today we're talking about Mr. Trent Acid.
And I feel like we got to chime it in like he deserves. From South Philly, Japan, and weighing in at 9.5 inches, Trent Acid.
Yeah, and he was like one of the big bright spots of CZW. Like, you could just be like, oh, CZW is kind of this and, you know, whatever, and roll your eyes at it. But, like, he was always like a big bright spot. Like, when he came out, like, oh, the whole show has changed. And you could see that whenever he would come out. You'd see that whenever you're watching. Like, your mood would change when he would come out. He was always one of the biggest bright spots.
And Nick had a note in our outline that said an elevator pitch on Trent. And I wrote this at 5 a.m., so this is 5 a.m. brain. Trent Acid is like if Rick Rude picked up a steel chair, started doing CTE quality high spots, and got retrained by Shawn Michaels. I don't know if that really works, but I think it's kind of close.
No, you nailed it. You just forgot the silver pants.
Yeah, you're right.
Silver Hardy pants. The South Philly version of the Hardy Boys.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
All right, Michael Verdi was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, November 12th, 1980.
And this is one of the best same on this day trivia I've done yet. I got two on this one. On this day, New York City mayor at the time, Ed Koch, admitted to trying marijuana. How am I doing?
Oh, no.
And Ryan Gosling was born on the same damn day as Trent Acid.
Oh, shit.
Which one's better looking? I don't fucking know.
That's a question. Who's got the better abs between Trent Acid?
Oh, God.
Well, I'll tell you what. Trent Acid got his abs before Ryan Gosling did. I know that much.
Yeah, that's true. I think Ryan Gosling was still doing Goosebumps or some shit.
So, Acid started wrestling at the age of 14, and there's some tape floating around, and he wasn't like a big, athletic 14-year-old that looks 18. The motherfucker looked 12. Like, it is insane.
If he looked double-digit age, it was generous.
Well, actually, 10 years ago or so, or maybe 8 or something, like almost a decade ago, I did an interview with the Briscoe brothers. And
cool.
They were talking about how I think they used to go to the ECW arena to watch shows, and much like when my dad would take me to a high school football game, you'd always find a kid there and you'd play with this new kid that you just never met before, and it might be a kid from a different town.
Yeah.
And then you're just palling around because like, it's another kid. Hey, I've met you. Let's be friends. And I guess that was kind of the way it was with the Briscoe brothers and Trent Acid. They'd both be like arena shows, and they'd be like jumping off the bleachers onto each other, pretending they were New Jack. So like, it's just this weird cross section that the Briscoe brothers and Trent Acid, like they knew each other before they got into wrestling. They were just young punk kids paying attention to Northeast wrestling, but it was kind of like me as a kid going to high school football games with my dad and meeting these random kids in different towns and becoming friends with them. So it's kind of funny how that all worked out. But yeah, his professional debut maybe 14, but he was definitely jumping off the bleachers when he was probably 8 or 10.
Huh. Got any Mr. Fuji ribs?
No, Rob, I do not. Do you have any more unauthenticated autographs that you want to sell, Rob?
Oh, wow.
Perhaps?
Wow. All right. All right. So a lot of Trent's early stuff.
He nailed that immediately, Nick.
Yeah, I know. Jesus, I had like 8 more of those. Now I can't even do them.
You gotta still do
I'm
them.
gonna put a hammer through that wall.
Trent's debut match was against his childhood friend Billy Ryle, I think is how you say it, for Tri-County Wrestling on May 19th, 1995. And he, of course, did it with no proper wrestling training, but he would eventually be given the name Trent Acid by a wrestling manager, Madonna Wayne Gacy.
Man, that's just, I mean, Madonna Wayne Gacy, that's you gotta give it up to how good that name is.
A lot of Trent's early stuff is either not documented or easily searchable, as it is fucking illegal because he was a child. But you can find match listings as early as February 10th, 1996, where Trent beat the Kamikaze Ninja in Philly for Tri-County Wrestling. And there's also a couple dates in 97 where he's working in a slightly bigger promotion, Jersey All-Pro. He'd even go on to win Jersey All-Pro's Tag Team Championship January 99 as a member of D-Sex with Billy Real. They beat Homicide and Kane D in a match that ended with little baby Trent going to the hospital after getting hit with a fucking VCR.
Yeah, physical media never dies.
Well, actually, one of the fucking most gruesome things that ever happened to Necro Butcher is I think he was wrestling Toby Klein, may have been JC Bailey, but it was definitely Idaho Mid-South, and Necro Butcher was on the outside, and his opponent was in the ring, and from the ring down to the floor, this guy just chucked a VCR at Necro Butcher's head, and it's the most gruesome thing I've ever seen before. It's so gruesome that I believe Matt Burns, which was the guy that was the ringside camera guy for Smart Mark Video, you can see him just his feet are moving around like, oh my god, but still trying to hold the shot, like he's trying to hold it together, but he's freaking out about it. And this is after he has recorded several years of Idaho Mid-South death matches, but somehow this VCR being chucked at Necro Butcher's head is one of the craziest things he's ever witnessed.
I want to say it's the Toby Klein, because I remember when I was super hardcore watching stuff, there was a Necro Butcher Toby Klein match that was in just kind of a high school gym. And they did that type of shit where you knew it was like, this is 6 years off their life. Like, this is the end.
Yeah, don't fuck with VCRs, man. Don't fuck with them.
Trent said he had to get 27 staples in his head from that VCR.
So around this point, Trent loosely trained at the Pitbulls school until it closed, with the Pitbulls being former ECW tag team champions Anthony Durnett and Gary Wolfe. And it was there Trent met John Kastner, a.k.a. future tag team partner Johnny Kashmere. When the Pitbulls school closed, the students obviously needed a new place to go work out, and that is how Trent would end up at Combat Zone Wrestling's school in New Jersey. In 99, Trent would legally break into the business, working against White Locusts at CZW Down in Flames, which it is currently going down in because of some stuff, right, Jake?
Yes, absolutely, right now. And are you sure it's not White Lotus instead of Locust? I believe it's Lotus, if I'm mistaken. Listen,
it
don't...
It is Lotus. Did you say Locust? I'm not even paying attention.
Don't challenge me on early CZW, my friend. This is a wheelhouse. I would say guilty pleasure, but I don't want to associate like, oh, this shit's dumb. Like, that is not the connotation. I love early CZW, especially like that first year or two when it's basically like you got some guys that were basically kind of like backyarders, and then guys that are kind of trained just enough, and then you got these guys that have been around the indies for a while, like this weird algorithm of Glenn Osborne and Reckless Youth and Zandig and Lobo and Trent and Johnny Kashmere, and just this weird amalgamation of just things coming together for the first time. It's beautiful and wonderful. And then you throw in like the Haas brothers and just weird stuff happening all the time, and just trying to figure out the identity, but just the idea of a small time, but like a kind of underground indie, the much the way that you see like a Black Label Pro or a GCW or freelance, like these indie shows that are like, we want to come off as like this underground indie as opposed to like portray ourselves to be just as big as WWE, or, oh, let's get a TV deal. It's like, no, we're going to do this in the back of a roller rink and somebody might die. It's just that vibe that I think is replicated a lot more today, where like people always want to have that underground like feel to it. Just like they were like at the forefront of that, doing it. And also too, something that was discussed in the Briscoe Brothers that I just mentioned earlier, they talk about this fascinating thing that happened in, the Northeast wrestling community, where once ECW closed, because ECW was known, they had some of the best wrestlers. They had the Jerry Lynn's, the Eddie Guerreros, Rob Van Dam, Dean Malenko's, these incredible, amazing wrestlers. And then they also had guys like New Jack, Vic Grimes, Sandman, Raven doing hardcore stuff. And it seems like once ECW closed, you had Ring of Honor pop up, you had CZW pop up, and then when they tried and find what their identity was, it almost kind of split, where Ring of Honor wanted to be more like the Jerry Lynn's, the Rob Van Dams, and the Eddie Guerreros and Dean Malenko's, where CZW is like, well, we want to fill that niche that Axel and Ian Rotten, Balls Mahoney, that hardcore itch, and they kind of went in separate directions. But like very early CZW, they're still trying to incorporate some of those better wrestling things. Like I said, using someone like a Reckless Youth, and probably the interest even in Trent himself and the way they featured him, and Rick Blade, and even an early Low Key. That thought process of like, well, we have wrestlers too, and trying to follow that ECW template. But later, as we'll see, they kind of split away from that, and like we're more blood and guts. And Ring of Honor had a little blood and guts in the beginning, which a lot of people forget, and then they split off like, no, we're solely technical.
Huh? Got any rat stories?
No, but I got.
Oh wait, sorry, the phone's ringing.
No, I'm not going to dignify that with a response. Because I'm sorry. I'm sorry, King of the Shoots. You just follow the list after I tell this wonderful and beautiful story and educate people on something. You just come back with, tell me about the rib stories.
Sorry, somebody's at the door.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah,
I educate people on a particular story and then just move on to the next question as if I said absolutely fucking nothing. Thank you, King of the Shoots.
All right. So as far as CZW matches go, Trent's first one here, kind of just a wrestling match. He loses in a swerve bro situation where a run-in comes in, he attacks White Lotus, and then he's like on the apron celebrating, but Lotus bounces back, gets the win. It's a whole thing.
And to give you an idea what Acid's looks right now, a lot of crowd members are screaming at him, "You're not Kidman!" So he's looking like Kidman a whole bunch. And I got to give a lot of respect to White Lotus and this whole ZZW atmosphere that Jake described. He comes out to November Rain by Guns N' Roses.
I was fast forwarding through this pay-per-view on the High Spots Network, who do not sponsor us, and I stopped exactly at a spot where someone in the crowd screams, "WCW sucks!" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "These motherfuckers have aluminum foil as their pipe and drape right now, and they're still like, at least we're not 1999 WCW, man." Like,
they don't even have a hard cam. They don't get a hard cam till the first Cage of Death.
Yeah, they have bought a shitload of trash bags and then cut them open and then tarped up a backdrop.
Hey, love it. I mean, they're making it work, so
Yeah.
God bless them.
So Trent would dive headfirst into the company. He'd start taking on guys like Wife Beater, Reckless Youth, and forming the tag team that September called the Backseat Boys with his training buddy Johnny Kashmere, with the Backseat Boys obviously being a slight play off the boy band craze of the late 90s. It was apparently a brain baby of pro wrestling manager Donnie B.
And I need to give a shout out that took me a while to get this after watching a couple of Trent Acid matches. But Trent would do a thing where he'd slam a dude, run into the corner, pull his pants down, exposing his butt, making all the girls scream and go wild. And then he would run up, jump off, do a moonsault, and that would be his finisher. And it took me 3 matches before I realized, oh, moonsault. And I felt so fucking stupid. But God, the girls screaming, it was legit boy band atmosphere for Trent and his butt.
Trent would be part of the first ever Cage of Death, and the first thing you ever hear on a CZW Cage of Death is someone coming out to Ba Wada Ba by Kid Rock. And like you could tell there was like some backstage drama where the wrestler wanted to wait until the "My name is Kid" part to walk out, but the showrunners were like, "Ricky, you're making us late." And he's like, "But I want to wait till the "My name is Kid" part." He's like, "God damn it, Ricky, just get out there." Because he walks out at like the most unclimactic part and he's dragging his feet like in protest, and it's hilarious.
Fuck you guys. I still listen to Bob with a Bob. All right, like
It's
you
a
got
good
them right.
song.
Like,
It's fine.
and fuck anybody that doesn't like Limp Bizkit too. Just throw that in there too. Like they got some bangers for sure.
So with the Limp Bizkit and Kid Rock references, we need to get you in this headspace for about the next 13 minutes of this podcast. Ba with a Ba, hardcore indie promotion, 1999, New Jersey. All right, so Trent's going to find himself in 2 matches here, and he's still pretty rough around the edges, but with these pre-2000s matches, you got to know, dude's still learning, still a baby. So Trent's first thing, he's going to hit a 3 count as the time limit expires at 2. It's crazy how that always happens. And then after that match, Johnny Kashmere and Robbie Marino walk out to Summer Lovin' from Greece, and their gimmicks are greasers. It's honestly wonderful. But they happen to have a little glitter on their face, so the entire crowd gets canceled from Twitter in unison for using a gay slur as Trent and Lotus attacks them. I heard a small child scream the F word, like a 7-year-old. It's awful.
Yeah, I actually, for a How Did This Get Booked episode, I had this nice, sweet lady watch CZW. They said it couldn't be done. And just the commentary from John House, like, she was not happy to be talking about said release. And she's just like, this is awful. Like, and just spent an hour and 15 minutes berating me on making her watch this for a podcast. For $0.
But it comes up more later, but we got to get, since we're talking about it now, we got to give respect to the Philly fans, because nobody can chant a Trent likes butt sex, but then 35 seconds later, do a golf clap for an amazing sequence with him and Ruckus. I mean, you got to give it up.
From here, he's bouncing around all the other Northeast promotions. He even landed himself a spot on the 2000 East Coast Wrestling Super 8 tournament, getting bounced in the first round by the Black Nature Boy, Scoot Andrews. And this is a yearly tournament. If you don't know, AJ Styles has been part of it. Both of the Hardy Boys. Some past winners, Paul London, Christopher Daniels, Austin Creed, a.k.a. Apollo Crews. Jake, do you know anything about the Super 8?
Sorry, I want to jump in real quick and say Charlotte's own Scoot Andrews.
Yeah, put some
right.
goddamn respect on Scoot Andrews' fucking name, all right? Don't just glaze right through it. And of course you would be like, oh, when AJ Styles won it, like, and that's the first. Let me show you how much credibility it has. AJ Styles won it, like. Of course, Nicholas would start there. But yeah, the Super 8. For whatever reason, I don't exactly know for sure how Jim Kettner pulled this off. Like, this was during a time where super indie tournaments were like a big deal. The King of the Indies tournament, even kind of like IW Mid-South Sweet 16, Sweet Science 16 was a big deal. Obviously, like, King of the Death matches from IW Mid-South as well, but like super indie tournaments got a lot of attention, even though I think that's kind of like waned over the years, like, because every promotion is trying to copy their own version of Battle of Los Angeles. And like during this time, like the Super 8 was where actually they got like people, like I think even Bruce Pritchard went to like the Super 8, or they sent agents there to scout talent. The
Wow.
Super 8 was like considered, this is where we discover our new talent. I think even Edge and Christian made an appearance in Super 8, if I'm not mistaken, or at least Christian did. I'm almost positive about that. And it was also too, like, some of the guys that were in developmental with WWE would get sent there to kind of bolster the high profile in this. And of course, Kettner would fly somebody in from the West Coast to make it seem like this is more of a national thing and make it such a big deal. I remember talking to Tony Kazina about it, who actually took part in one of the Super 8s, and he just talked about how Jim Kettner was very particular on the things that he wanted, ran it like a very reputable promotion, and tried to get these these guys in the Super 8 to launch their career from this particular tournament. So he put a lot of work in making the Super 8 like this thing, like, oh, this is the beginning of somebody's career. Because you always hear these stories about how your boy, X-Pac, 123 Kid, Lightning Kid, a tape of him wrestling Sabu got circulated around, and that was the thing that got him noticed. And this is during the era where tapes would get traded, the DVDs eventually would get traded, or video of this guy in this tournament and showing how much of an incredible wrestler is, and that gets circulated around, and then he builds his career off of that. And that's basically what the Super 8 was done, was to create that. And it's a very noble thing that I don't think is done so much anymore. Is it a promoter that's like looks at something like a Super 8 or like a Bola or an event or a tournament or some sort of thing, and looks at it as like, oh, okay, this thing is created to create a new star, but not somebody that can end up being a star in this promotion 2 or 3 years from now, but somebody could be a star someplace else, more successful than this place right here. But then people would know that this is such a big deal, and then I have to respect and honor the weight in which the winner of this is carried and looked at. So I must treat you out with a considerable amount of respect, and then people know that when you go to the Super 8, you could be seeing a guy that could be somewhere else, where a lot of times now it's like, let's put the guy over that's going to be here 3 years from now so he can benefit me, as opposed to let's create this thing that's a launching pad for somebody else, and then hopefully they remember it. Or we make this such a big deal that people come in and they know to always come in for this. So not a lot of people create specific events to make a guy and his career going forward. They want to make their promotion and make their brand, or make a guy that they know they can have around. So there's a weird shift in indie wrestling that way. And that's always the discussion with Bola every year. Like, who are they going to put over? And obviously, for a while, like, the guy who wins Bola is sometimes the guy that's going to be around for a while. But the idea is if you have a great match in the Bola tournament, that could be the springboard. So Bola, I think, is one of the few where you kind of get enough of both worlds that if you have a great match in Bola, it could be the springboard to something else. But sometimes the winner is necessarily the guy that's going to be there for a couple of years, that you're going to get a couple good matches out, a couple good main events, the next champion that puts them over. And then, of course, after that, they springboard from there. It's usually like step 2 as opposed to the last step before they go up.
Huh. What are your thoughts on Demolition?
See, once again, this is going to be what this fucking episode is. I'm going to like drop some fucking knowledge and just, you're going to be a shitbag fucking interviewer. Don't forget to say, my next question for you is...
You need a water? You want a water?
Look, we got to switch tapes. We got to switch tapes.
All right. So aside from picking up the tag team titles with the Backseat Boys in summer of 2000, Trent and CZW would head over to Japan as part of CZW's relationship with Big Japan, and Acid worked as a singles competitor, winning Big Japan's junior heavyweight title.
I couldn't find any footage of any of this, really. Nick, could you find anything?
Nah, it's nothing.
I even deep dove on my obscure internet torrent stuff, and I just couldn't find anything of this. It sounded like, just from everything I read about it, was fantastic. But
really, because I'm sure I had the VHS tapes at the office. I'm pretty sure I got like several Trent Acid matches from roughly about this era, just sitting on a VHS tape, maybe even a DVD-R in the office right now.
Sounds like some Patreon stuff that we could potentially get sued for, but not if no one else finds out.
Yeah.
Is that the sound you make when a private link is uploaded?
Back in the States, the Backseat Boys would lose the CZW Tag Team titles at Blood, Sweat, and Violence, August 12, 2000, to Rick Blade and probably my all-time favorite hardcore wrestler, Sick Nick Mondo.
Sick Nick Mondo, also not only your favorite hardcore wrestler, but also too a fabulous video editor, cinematographer. Like a lot of the John Moxley promos that you've seen, especially like after his release, all done by Sick Nick Mondo. Yes.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember hearing that he went to film school, but I mean, shit, he actually made some of himself, which for going to film school is pretty impressive.
Have you not seen his documentary that he made about
No,
himself?
I've seen it's on YouTube, but I still haven't watched it. I really got to watch that fucker.
It's
I know I suck.
very deep and artsy and very good. I love Sick Nick, man. So this match is like, I think it's amongst CZW fans, like this match still gets talked about. And you see Trent here with like a solid year of being a professional wrestler, like for real. And holy shit, he is so much better than some of these earlier matches we've talked about. You're still not getting Harley Race or Ricky Steamboat ring psychology, but you can see him like putting these pieces together to become what he will become. And this match is just so much fun.
Yeah, oh man. I had like note after note after note of just like, oh God, fuck me type spots. But I think the one that it was hard for me to write out was Rick Blade gets Trent Acid in a Mexican surfboard.
Yeah.
And I forget how it happens, but somebody holds a chair over Trent Acid's face, and then Sick Nick Mondo does a springboard moonsault that then smashes into the chair and into Trent Acid's face as he's in a Mexican surfboard. It looks like he's fucking
And
dead.
the incredible thing about Rick Blade is he's very much a high-risk, high-reward guy in that there are things that he does that do not accurately come off well. But there is always that hope that if he gets into a situation and he hits 95%, it might be the most incredible thing you've ever seen before. But then there are times where he's a little bit more 60-40, and then it's like, ooh. But if you, as a performer, are wrestling somebody like that, and I think Trent would have been smart enough to recognize that, like, hey, I need to pull him back and get him to do the things that I think he can do 90% of the time as of the things that he can do 60% of the time. So let's focus more on that 90% as opposed to swinging for the fences on the 60% just so we can get him a match where like, oh, he's good and he's on point, and then they can kind of forgive you later when you miss something that 40% of the time.
I'm glad you said that because Rick Blade was like MVP in this match. He was incredible the entire time.
Yep. The thing that gets me is like there's this opening sequence, if people watch this match, which they should because it's fucking fantastic. But the opening sequence, it's that thing where it's so choreographed, but it doesn't matter. I still popped like a total bitch because it's so infectious and the energy adds up so much. Rick Blade does all this type of Matrix style shit where it is like an actual kung fu movie. And sometimes it can look pretty rough, but when he nails it, like it's goosebump stuff, man.
I don't want to spoil the spot for people who haven't seen it yet, but there's this double table spot that when it happened, the way I reacted to seeing it, I scared Spencer, who was working with headphones in. Like she like jerked back around and was like, "Is everything okay?" Because I was.
Nick's watching Faces of Death over here, and Spencer's worried for him.
And as far as hardcore wrestling goes, I think this is a really good example. This match of hardcore wrestling where it's like perfectly balanced. Like it's so hardcore, it's so breathtaking, but like there's some like really legit innovative wrestling moves in this match. They could have even turned up the hardcore a little bit with like, you know, some more crazy light bulb whatever, but like this was like perfectly balanced. I thought traditional wrestling fans couldn't be too mad at it, and then the hardcore fans are also stoked about it.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Hardy Boys like ladder matches from about this same time period.
Yeah,
is that idea of athletic maneuvers within a hardcore environment, because always the knock on hardcore guys is like, oh, it's guys that are unathletic just gushing and just bleeding all over the place and not really doing anything. But when you take something that seems so one-dimensional and add a second or third dimension to it, it just makes it that much more incredible and limitless in a sense.
Jake, what's the most hardcore match you've ever done?
Well, yeah. I've had a couple of like campground matches where it's like with the tent and camping chairs, and in one of them I got like a bunch of sticks outside and it was like, you know, kindling, but they were like big sticks, so they kind of, it seemed a bit more visually interesting, and I took like a Death Valley driver into them. And that was a big mistake because there was like little like parts of those sticks. So I got like a million little cuts all over me. It was like wooden barbed wire basically. And then landing awkwardly on sticks that hit me in a weird place, like right on the rib area. Like that was not fun. But then early in my career, I don't think anybody would have ever seen this. I don't think anybody's ever seen this one. I had it was a 3-way table match, tag team title match back in New Midwest Wrestling in Springfield, Illinois. The first promotion I ever worked for, probably the first 8 months of wrestling I ever did. And it came down to me and another guy, Toka Steve, my trainer. And basically, we felt like the last table, because elimination tables, of course, because it's independent wrestling. We've got to put 5 guys through a table. Because the thing is, too, like, you couldn't just like hit one table and then the team's eliminated. No, you could still be one person, then fight your way all the way in. So, like, we go through 5 tables. So by the time you get to that final table bump, it's got to kind of fucking mean something. So we decided that the final table bump would be wrapped in barbed wire.
Oh.
So we wrapped this table in barbed wire, and me and Toga Steve were on the apron, like fighting who's going to fall. And I used to do this one maneuver that Regal used to do, which I may start doing again, because it's been a while since I've done it, and I haven't seen a whole lot of people do it, where you take the arm and almost you clothesline the guy with their own arm, almost into like a kind of, I would say Koji cutter, or kind of a cutter, reverse cutter situation, but you have the guy clothesline with the arm. And that was what I did to Toga Steve off the apron through a barbed wire table. And the thing is, I tried to put him on the table as much as possible, so I overshot the table. So I basically jumped off the apron and did like a flying back bump and landed on like this bingo hall floor, like flat backed, just so I could give Toga Steve as much of this barbed wire table as possible. That was probably like one of the more hardcore things I've ever done in my career. It definitely shows that it was 8 months in. Just wish it was at a crowd in Philadelphia. I would have been an over fucking star, and I would have wrestled Chris Hero in 2009, but I was doing it in Springfield, Illinois, unbeknownst to anyone in the entire wrestling world.
You have that on tape?
Oh yeah, I got it. And it's funny too, when it happens, the tape kind of fucks up. So you almost miss the bump, but it's great, the fucking commentators, because it's the finish of the match, and you think that, in the finish, like, oh my gosh, Mr. Elite won, or like there'd be some sort of reaction. But once it happened, it was like dead silence. Like, here's the bump, and then all you hear is, oh fuck.
Nothing but grave concern. Just concern.
Yeah, concern. Like, oh fuck.
What's the most hardcore match you've ever been offered? Have you ever gotten offered for like a light tube crazy insanity and you had to turn it down? Or
I was offered to wrestle Nick Gage. And I said, yeah. And I kind of was like, yeah, I'll do that. But I should have been more enthusiastic, because that same show, like, he wrestled Kurt Stallion for Wrestling Revolver. And it was like my first time, like, being a little bit closer to Nick Gage. Like, I'd always kind of seen him at other places, or like I never like interacted with him too much, but I finally like was in a locker room with him, and of course he is the most polite individual. What a fucking sweetheart. Oh my god, Nick Gage is such a wonderful human being. And once I recognized that at the show and he was wrestling somebody else, I'm like, oh man, I really should have fucking went bonkers when this was suggested, because goddamn, like, what a fucking cool dude. And here's a sidebar into my personal life. There's actually like this girl that I'm talking to who's a huge like wrestling fan. She's one of the cool kids. She likes the independent wrestling TV and GCW, but she has no fucking time for highspots.com because we're a bunch of old fucks. So like and she was going to be down in Florida watching a lot of the collective shows because WrestleCon is for the old farts, But she's a big fan of Nick Gage, and we were talking about if you could have Nick Gage replace ... Like, we were playing a game of like, if you could have Nick Gage replace a Disney princess, if you could have Nick Gage replace a president, and not including the one we have right now. And my answer was, if you could have Nick Gage replace any other president other than the one we have right now, I picked Lyndon B. Johnson, because then that would mean Nick Gage would be around during the civil rights movement, and he's talking about MDK is down with MLK. He could then go on and people talk about Vietnam, and he'd be like, fuck that shit. And then also, too, filling in after your president's assassinated. Could you imagine the promo that Nick Gage would say, you come after one of my own, I fucking come after your goddamn ass. Murder, death, kill, motherfucker. Like, that's what I would love to see in this world. So, yeah. Nick Gage, just wrestling Nick Gage in a regular ass fucking match, that's the most hardcore thing that was put in front of my plate that I still regret to this day. Because if I could ever make an opportunity where I wrestle Nick Gage, that would be incredible. And if we do tent stuff and camping tent stuff and put me through kindling, and me and Nick Gage in a campground match would be, I think, superb.
So Trent would spend the next year murdering motherfuckers across the Northeast and tons of promotions, big and small, building a reputation, further improving in the ring. And in 2001, he got quite the push from CZW as a singles competitor, as the owner, John Zandig, was very high on him.
Know how you let him know that he was real high on him?
How?
John Zandig, the boss, saw Trent just kind of stretching in the ring, and Zandig just called him over, didn't even holler. Everybody knew that because he looked Trent dead in the eye and just called him over. Gave him the come hither with his finger. Trent walked over. John put his arm around Trent, walked him out back. There was probably some Honda Civics parked in the background. And Trent just kind of leaned up against one, had his arms crossed, didn't know if he was getting into trouble with John Zandig. And John just stood there and looked Trent right in the eyes as Trent leaned on a Honda Civic and goes, "In the blood, how to wear, how CCW, how to wear, how CCW, CCW." That's how that went down.
01 is when they did like the Heat sketch, right?
Yeah, it is. 4/15/2001. They are the Backseat Dudleys, and they show up. It's like one of those NYC shows where they have like a normal crowd. I forget what that shit was exactly. But you got Cole and Taz on the mic, and Cashmere's on the mic saying they're the Backseat Dudleys, and everybody's honorary Dudleys. And then Prince Albert comes out and power bombs both of them through a table. But they got 85 seconds of WWF airtime for just that small little moment. And then commercial break after they get destroyed.
It was WWF New York, if you're not mistaken. That wonderful restaurant that stuck around, which the menu WWF New York, I'm sure will end up on an auction someday, somewhere on High Spot's Facebook page.
2001, the Best of the Best show was huge for him. All right, this is Trent wrestles 5 separate matches in one night. As a 3-way, the second match, he wrestles Juventud Guerrera, who for some reason's doing a rock gimmick where he says Hoovy has come back to Philly and does a Hoovy people's elbow. That's weird.
He was
shit
doing
to
that
watch.
in WCW, man.
Did he?
He was like The Rock would say The Rock, but he was the Juice.
See, God, I'm slipping. Then he takes on a young Jay Briscoe. They do a crazy ass spot that I won't ruin, but it's definitely worth. Then he goes up against Winger in the finals, who's in a mask. But, it turns out it was Johnny Cashmere the whole time in a Winger mask. And then he takes that off, and then the actual Winger comes out. I don't know why he wasn't informed. And then he actually loses to Winger. But that's 5 separate matches in one damn night. Let me get some other ones. If you want to watch CZW Breakaway Brawl, it's an outside light tube match with Acid, Zandig, Cashmere, and Justice Pain. If you want to see Zandig do a Japanese arm drag, yeah, that's a good sell. And then 2 things I can't recommend highly enough watching shit. Trent Acid and Ruckus had 2 matches, 9/29/2001 and then 12/15/2001, the second one at Cage of Death 3. They have a little storyline where this is when Trent has the CZW and Big Japan Junior Heavyweight titles. And there's a double pin in the first match, which is really good and spot heavy crazy. And then there's the Cage of Death match is exceptionally CZW. You got Trent doing moonsault off the CZW stage. You got Ruckus doing a shooting star press off the commentator stage onto Trent through a table. And they end up getting counted out. And then, here comes Zandig's music hits, and he walks out with the ladder, who says a bunch of ill-timed bullshit. Restart the match. Cashmere interferes, and they pin Ruckus. But then the referee, Brian Logan, comes out, who spears the fuck out of Johnny Cashmere. He restarts the match for the second time, and then Trent Acid ends up hitting the nastiest Yakuza kick, which, gotta point out, Trent had one of the best Yakuza kicks ever, and then he finally wins it. It is one of those good examples of a restart, dumpster fire, spot shit, insanity that's really worth watching, and him and Ruckus doing it great. One more thing. After this, there's a Trent versus Winger Ruckus match, and to immediately start the match, Winger is a Japanese wrestler in a mask. Trent immediately rips off Winger's mask and wears it himself to start the match. So talk about some shitty disrespect. It's fantastic.
2002 is also a really big year for Trent. He grabbed the CZW Junior Heavyweight title for the entire year. He'd also go on to win 2002's CZW Best of the Best tournament, and he would land him a spot in this new company called Ring of Honor. And let the people know about Ring of Honor starting out, because I would say 2002 to 2006-ish, 7-ish is like really shaped the way I view pro wrestling.
Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning of the program, like they were trying to fill that void of what ECW was, but also too they were looking at the 2001 King of the Indies as well. Like the idea of just there are these highly technical professional wrestlers all over the world, and we can fly them in, bring them in. We can bring someone in like a Bryan Danielson, a Christopher Daniels from the West Coast, get these guys that are performing at such a high work rate and still a little bit of blood and guts, but like let's lean more towards the highly technical professional wrestlers. And also we have some very good professional wrestlers in the area like Homicide, Low Key, guys that are coming in their own, but the talent needs to be fostered and nurtured, and wrestling guys from the West Coast, the Midwest, Florida, all coming together and converging in that Northeast area in that hotbed of people that paid attention to ECW since it just disappeared. It was trying to fill that void that ECW had, but got away from some of the blood and guts, which was kind of seen as the thing that was a bit of the downfall, the thing that lost their TV contract, the thing that kind of turned people off to the product itself, but lean harder on the things that the people in charge of Ring of Honor thought that ECW did so well. And it was just trying to find their identity and find their balance. And they tried a lot of things. There's a lot of things that doesn't hold up. There's some things that obviously some swings, like we're trying to figure out what our identity is. But you're seeing the beginnings of like the Samoa Joes, like I said, Bryan Danielson, Christopher Daniels, Low Key, AJ Styles.
AJ Styles.
I was getting there. I'm not going to put in my first name that I mentioned, but I'll put in my seventh name I mentioned. And then also, too, Amazing Red, too. Like,
Yeah,
like,
man. Paul
oh, yeah.
London, too, man.
Paul
Big time
London,
back then.
and just giving guys a lot of opportunity to express themselves, and this incredible art form of professional wrestling that was, I think, now coming to the forefront now in the last 2 or 3 years. These guys were doing it in 2002.
It was weird. I remember because I was getting RF Video newsletters in the mail because I think I bought some ECW fan cams and stuff, and I would keep getting the newsletters, and then ECW shut down, and then I started getting them, and the covers were all this new Ring of Honor thing. And in the time of my life, I just wasn't doing wrestling stuff, but I remember seeing Samoa Joe on a cover. I'll post it on our social media. I found an old one in my room. But just seeing this new promotion and the way they were building it up got me so damn interested. And then later, like around 2006, I finally got into it and I dove in hardcore. So, of course, I went back and bought the shows and watched them in chronological order because I'm going to follow this fucking narrative, man. But the first show, the Era of Honor, there's a three-way between Danielson, Daniels, and Low Key, all top-tier dudes that Jake just mentioned. And I think that's what Ken Shamrock's the ref for that, because they still had a little, WWF hype to it. But the three-way they do, man, it sets the tone for the entire company. They'd hype that match for years and years throughout all the DVDs to just try to sell stuff. But that three-way, I cannot recommend enough. Technical, brutal, some of the high spots that make you worry about their safety, and that match just left an impression on me. It was that shit where you're like, the fantasies you had in your head of like, oh man, what if they did this in a match? And then they kept doing this where it almost seemed superhuman. They did that, but it felt legit because Danielson and Christopher Daniels and Low Key were fucking workers, not just spot monkeys, and they made it all believable. And then I just watched all those early Night of the Champions with Xavier being the first champ and all that stuff, man. Those early days, each Ring of Honor show in those early days had almost a match of the year candidate every single card. And it was just so exciting to kind of find this new thing that you didn't think would ever exist.
Huh. Micah, were you there when Brett punched Vince? Had in my notes here that you were there when Brett punched Vince. What were your reactions?
I'm no selling this. No, I was not, Nick. Please, next, go on.
So the Backseat Boys' first match would be taking on Homicide and your boy Steve Corino, Jake. October 5th, 2002, Glory by Honor.
I want to ask Jake to confirm or disconfirm. That's a thing. Trent said that Steve Carino used to get really high and write screenplays for fan fiction of Beverly Hills 90210. Jake, is that true or not true?
I can confirm the former part of that statement. The latter part of that statement I cannot confirm nor deny.
The cool thing that they gave the Backseat Boys respect, and they kind of had an invasion part where they came in and said they were the best tag team champs or best tag team in the world. They gave them the respect, and they came in looking like $1 million right out the gate.
Trent would also be part of the first ever ROH Final Battle, December 28th, 2002, taking on the Hit Squad and Special K. So Backseat Boys and Trent, they're around for like all these historic first for companies that, are going to eventually go on to be their big flagship pay-per-view for the year.
Yeah, I can't. The Final Battle match just makes Trent and the Backseat Boys look fucking fantastic, man. Just the dream sequence is their tag team chain wrestling type thing where they hit spot after spot, but they make it look so good.
Trent would also get into a feud with Homicide in both CZW and ROH. And man, Homicide who didn't feud with Homicide in early Ring of Honor?
Oh, that promo that Eddie Kingston cut on NWA Power, where he was like, "You show Homicide some respect. That man built New York City." That's basically what he meant. Is Homicide? He was a fucking cornerstone for Northeast independent wrestling, and when I first started being around him a little bit more when I was doing ringside camera work for Ring of Honor, like I remember him saying back then, and that was like, gosh, that was like 2011, 2012, maybe 2013, in that era, and he was just saying stuff like, "Man, I just want to be around long enough to put more people over." And now this is like 8 years later, and he's still going out there and trying to do his best to get people over, still trying to, do his thing and give people opportunities and open doors for people and make wrestling better. And I don't know if Homicide's ever going to get the credit he deserves for building goddamn New York City. Eddie Kingston said it better than anybody else. It's the fucking truth. Agreed. 1000%.
And just the matches you need to watch, CZW 510 2003. I mean, the intensity they put on shit, they're so good at knowing how to do good creative spots, working in real hate heat and making you believe, but then doing those big crazy shit that makes you fear for them, man. Just that CZW match, their Wrestle Rave Fight Without Honor, I can't recommend enough. The atmosphere is insane. Trent Acid is mocking Homicide in his entire look. They do a Ace Crusher off the top rope through a table to the outside. When I saw that in like 2008, I remember thinking, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. God, the fucking Yakuza fighting spirit back and forth exchanges they would have. Holy shit, man. They made me so excited just watching wrestling. And it was, I can't even fucking get it into words because they just put that intensity in it so much that you were scared for the next spot, and it made everything exciting as hell, man.
And anyone that wants to try to sum up Trent Acid as like a light tube garbage wrestler, watch that Fight Without Honor, man. That is an incredible pro wrestling match, and it's brutal as fuck. I think that's my favorite match of Trent Acid.
100%, that's up there for me. That's probably number 2 for me. We'll get to number 1 in a little bit. But also watch the Ring of Honor Beating the Odds match they have. They do all their crazy stuff. I don't mean to just kind of throw it to the side, but they do so much fun, crazy stuff. It is kind of like that. But at one point, Homicide busts Trent open the hard way, and his eye starts bleeding. Then they do a better Yakuza fighting spirit exchange than the Wrestle Rave match. And then there's a roaring elbow that Trent does. Second best roaring elbow in the business, only to Chris Hero. He hits Homicide awkwardly. He breaks and busts the fuck out of Homicide's nose. It's a shoot style. Homicide might have got concussed in it. He's sitting there. There's blood pouring out of both nostrils. They work so hard. They both really fuck each other up the hard way. At the end, the crowd's going nuts. They all shake hands. Those dudes knew how to make goosebumps exist, man.
After the Homicide feud, the Backseat Boys would win the ROH Tag Team Championships, defeating Special K in the final of a gauntlet match for the vacant titles at ROH Glory by Honor, September 20th, 03. The Backseat Boys would lose the titles a month later to Dizzy and Izzy of Special K at ROH Tradition Continues. But this would make the Backseat Boys the first ever tag team to win both CZW and ROH titles.
Yeah, damn it. I wish they would have had a little bit longer run, but you know, the world's not a happy place. Also, if you want to watch that gauntlet match where they win it, I forgot how funny CM Punk was on commentary, but holy fucking shit, CM Punk is funny on commentary.
Back in CZW, Trent would be on another Cage of Death card, and he'd pick back up the tag team titles from Nate Hatred and Nick Gage as part of the Backseat Boys. While dipping back and forth during his ROH feud with Homicide and Special K, Trent Acid, Johnny Cashmere would join the High Five stable, which looks like HIV because of the Roman numeral. That shit's legit clever.
Yeah.
And they would feud with Zandig's Ultraviolet team.
Yeah, they had the whole angle where, it's Zandig Shoot Company, but it's a corporate takeover and we're going to do it. You might have seen some of this infamous footage where they got, I don't know if Zandig is just an S&M dude by nature. Well, obviously he fucking is. Where they actually put 4 fucking hooks into Zandig's shoulder blades and back and pull him up above the ring. It's some of the most fucked up imagery I've seen. And the best part is, throughout all this, there's probably 6, 7 guys in the ring, and Trent is the one working the situation the most. He's still punching and kicking Zandig as he's being hooked like he's in fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's talking shit to him. He's working the whole time. The one thing I always loved watching Trent and getting to see him evolve was how much he would work every little moment that he could, man. He never stopped. He always had a facial expression, or he was talking shit to somebody. Just some little thing. He was good about details and good being captivating because you never knew what that dude was going to do. He's going to jump off the top rope and land on his head, or he was just going to have a goofy little laugh and flip the crowd off at the perfect moment that would make it pop. But yeah, goddamn. Jake, do you remember this Zandig getting hooked and thrown up above the ring?
Some people regard it as the point in time where everybody left CZW and went to Ring of Honor. Like, they point this as the turning point. I'm like, yep, this is not for us anymore.
Right.
Fuck off, CZW. It was like the first time, like CZW, like they got in the arena, they had a lot of momentum, they were running shows there once a month. Finally, we get wrestling back in the ECW arena once a month. People are excited. We got this new company, CZW. They got new stars. They got this blood and guts professional wrestling. What the fuck are you doing? Wait a minute. This isn't pro wrestling. It's like everybody saw it and then immediately turned into Jim Cornette and just fucking left. Like, it's just this weird thing of like, this is not what I came to see in professional wrestling. This is not, like, people got super turned off by that. From all the accounts that I've heard about that incident, that was the turning point where everybody just like switched over to Ring of Honor, and that was about the time that Ring of Honor started picking up momentum, is because they scooped up all these fans from CZW. They're like, yep, we're not watching anymore because you guys are doing this over here. So that's what I've always heard from a couple different sources. And then that's when CZW becoming a punchline for the next 18 years like, throughout. And this was like the first time that they were mentioned as such.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to watch. If you like that type of shit or just want to say you saw it, it's pretty fucking gruesome, man.
So the next match, we could probably do an entire episode on just this match.
We should do a live stream where we all watch it, because that would be fun.
That is a fun idea. So the Ultraviolet versus High Five feud would come to an end at Cage of Death 5. In the Cage of Death match, and you got Ian Knox, John Zandig, Lobo, Nick Gage, Wife Beater, and a surprise entrant, taking on Adam Flash, B-Boy, the Backseat Boys, the Messiah, and Nate Hatred.
I'll go ahead and step in. Before all this, Trent actually wrestled Jimmy Rave earlier in the card before the Cage of Death. They had a Iron Man title in CZW where it was basically 20 minutes. How many pinfalls was the winner? Trent held on to that for a good long time. There's a good exchange between him and Jimmy. They put on a hell of a match, man. Jimmy, who most people probably don't remember, but he was a hell of a worker. People threw toilet paper at him. It was a good fucking gimmick. And I also want to put Trent over on the pre-match team promo before this fucking shit show. Trent reminded me of like the Survivor Series promos where it was a team and that each one cuts a little bit of a promo and they're all staring into the camera. And Trent had that presence where he would look into the camera and you believed him. You knew he was a fucking real dude. You knew he wanted to win the match. Everybody else is kind of, All right, I'm going to go for this. This is kind of weird. In film school, we watched a clip from the movie Stand By Me. Everybody's probably seen it. The kids go to find a dead body. And you'll probably remember there's a sequence where they're walking on some train tracks and everybody's running and screaming to jump off the bridge before the train hits them. And our film professor at the time showed us a clip because some of the kids get to the bridge and they're screaming at the other kids to make it to the other side. And there's a shot where it's like Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman. And you see Corey Feldman, in comparison to the rest, is just really shit in the bed. But River Phoenix, at his young age, is the most committed, in-the-moment dude in the world. And in a weird way, I was watching these promos, and the way that Trent would sell every moment, stare into the camera, he was River Phoenix and everybody else was Corey Feldman. I don't know if that fucking worked, but the actual match. All right, Nick, what's your favorite spot?
Oh my God. When New Jack comes out, I legitimately marked out.
Oh, I marked out so hard.
He had a fucking knife hanging on a chain around his neck. I was like, oh dear God. The spot with Trent, I think he threw, was it Nick Gage? He threw him off of the side of the elevated walkway down through a table. It was nuts. The bumps into the tact ring. I mean, this match is fucking, it's you can't describe it. It's too much is going on, and all of it is the most insane fucking thing you've ever seen happening multiple times at the same time. It's absurd.
I think my favorite, so there's an extended, I can't even describe the fucking monstrosity that this thing is. There's a spot where they're hanging off of a chain link fence that's attached to the ceiling, and then one of the dudes swings off of it and does a flying elbow drop onto a dude who's laying in the ring that's covered with a million thumbtacks. And it looks like something out of a fucking Thai action movie. There's probably 6 times, at least, where I screamed, oh my God, and legit feared for their life. Because there are these spots, man, if they don't do it right, they are dead. It's one of those perfect it's like a party tape wrestling match. It's like you go to a party, it's like, man, you got to watch Cage of Death 5. And then you put it on, everybody's fucked up and they watch it and they're just blown away. I could not believe what I was watching.
So around 2004 is when Trent and CZW and the Backseat Boys would kind of start having some trouble. Trent's personal demons were also starting to creep in, but not as much as they will. And the Backseat Boys would actually leave temporarily, but they would come back for Trent to have a career match at 04 CZW Retribution against Teddy Hart.
This is going to be a crazy thing I'm going to say, but I think Teddy Hart versus Trent Acid at Retribution might be in my top 20 matches of all time.
Wow.
Now, I know that's a crazy fucking thing. I know what I said sounds insane, but the atmosphere at this match is, it's going to be another crazy thing I'm going to say, but it's kind of comparable to Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania. Yeah, I know, I'm crazy. Shut the fuck up. But how much heat is in this match? And it's a small arena, so everything is fucking amplified. And it's just the dueling chants of let's go Eddie, let's go Acid, and just Teddy Hart losing his fucking mind. They end up going outside, wrestling in the streets of Philadelphia, fucking spots on cars. I mean, it's a total fucking shit show, but it's one of those that evolves to a place where you didn't expect. The underrated part of this is Trent selling, man. He sells so realistic, and I bought it, and it's just, I can't rant about this match enough. I don't know what to say. I could not believe how much I fucking love this match.
You know, Teddy Hart not having more CZW matches, I think, is one of the great missteps in all of the wrestling world. Like, Teddy Hart, who he is, fits perfectly in that environment. There should have been just the train wreck that is CZW, especially in this era, and the train wreck that always has been Teddy Hart. Like, could have created something that we'd still be talking about even to this day. It's a shame that never got put on display. Now, don't get me wrong, none of it would hold up, and none of it would be pushing forward pro wrestling as this legitimate art form. But god damn it, I would have saw some stuff that I would never see again, and probably never see again because it was the wrong thing to do. So there is that aspect to it as well. But it would have been super fucking interesting if we got a little bit more of that. But you get to see quite a bit of it right here on display with Trent.
So Trent goes on to win his career match, but he's still dramatically going to leave CZW shortly after.
One random side bit around this time is the weirdest things I found just deep diving on Trent. Trent mentions in his shoot interview that he went on a tour with Ruckus to Italy, and they hung out with Bret Hart in fucking Italy. There's a YouTube camcorder recording of Trent Acid and Bret Hart and Ruckus walking around Italy, and it's basically Trent looking at all the hot chicks, commenting on him. And then there's video of them celebrating Bret Hart's birthday at an Italian restaurant, which the restaurant plays Bret Hart's entrance music as they bring out his cake. Trent said they just hung out and drank champagne all night and got fucked up. And Bret gave him so much advice, and he kept in contact with Trent. And it was one of those weird ass kind of like Mad Lib things that like Ruckus, Bret Hart, and Trent Acid hung out in Italy for a night. It's cool footage. You definitely gotta look up.
It's not ridiculous when you think about the common thread between those three. They all like to get high. They speak English and they all want to get high. Of course they were gonna those things are gonna collide. Like, hey, we need to get some weed and we need to smoke it so we can have a good time here. Oh, and we can't talk to anybody because we don't know Italian. Great, let's just hang out together, speak American, get super fucking high, and it's your birthday and you're an international superstar. Yeah, come on, man.
Hey, and I want to put over real quick Trent's last match at CZW. This is one of the weirdest heartfelt moments I've had doing research for this podcast. So first I want to put over Trent's or the Backseat Boys entrance when they would come out to the Midnight Express's theme song, which I didn't know was from the actual drug smuggling late 70s or early 80s movie Midnight Express. Jake, did you know that Midnight Express got their song from the movie?
Yeah.
I'm sure you did. Yeah, you're smarter than me.
Correct. I'm smarter about movies than you.
It hurt, man. I admit it. It hurt when I learned this. I felt like an idiot. So they would come out to the Midnight Express music. Guys, the vibe it would create was so good. And they would come out, only dudes, first dudes to ever do it, where they would act like strippers and all the chicks in the front row would stick dollars down their pants. So that's your context. So his last match in CZW, there was one chick to the left of camera, to the right of Trent walking out, who would always be at every CZW arena show, ready to put dollars down Trent's pants. And I would say she's been doing it for the 3.5 years of matches I watched. And for her, the last match, she didn't know this, but I did, that it was the last time she was going to get to put dollars down Trent's pants. And for something in me, it just made me go, oh, fuck.
So shortly after, the Backseat Boys would have a dramatic exit from CZW. They hated how they were getting booked, and they even accused Zandig of interfering in their career and costing them bookings and other promotions, even saying specifically Zandig contacted Steve Corino and got them pulled off of a World 1 show.
Yeah, they didn't seem to like Corino too much. And then there's 45 minutes of them shitting on Zandig, which is kind of fun to...
Well, in that interview, too, where they're discussing leaving CZW, you can see like the heartbreak in their eyes.
Yeah,
and
for real.
That always stuck with me when I saw that. Like, 'cause I saw that shoot interview like years ago. Like, it's probably been 10 years since I've seen that shoot interview. It's one of those shoot interviews that I just put in like on a drive, like on a portable DVD player, and used to listen to them the way I listen to podcasts. Because I would do that like when I worked for High Spots. I remember like seeing just the heartbreak in their eyes of being a part of this promotion and feel like you had a little bit of ownership over it. And then the guy who writes the checks feels the need to exert his authority to let you know, like, no. All this hard work that you've put in, it means absolutely nothing. I'm the boss. Fuck you. And just that heartbreak is how I feel about PWX, the local promotion here. is that I've felt time and time again that I've been reminded, like, oh yeah, all that hard work that you put in doesn't mean anything. All those times when you took your own personal credit card and put it down for rental chairs in York, South Carolina, trying to invent some sort of device where the ring can sit on a slope in the neighborhood theater, that doesn't mean nothing. Being the guy that paid for Roderick Strong's hotel room, pick guys up at the airport, book guys while I was working ringside camera with Ring of Honor, grab a promo with them. This is before when everybody like had cell phones and could send in a promo. I would seek these guys out to get online YouTube promos to promote the show and use social media, but then told, fuck you, that doesn't mean anything. It's just a constant reminder that nobody's that important. Everybody can be replaced, and getting humbled like that is fucking rough, and it fucking sucks. And then what always fucking happens, you become a bigger commodity, and then they bring you back and they forget like it never fucking happened, and it's all fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what happened with fucking Trent and Johnny Kashmere. It's just like you could tell like they were told that their hard work doesn't matter. And I think when you're in a leadership position like that you should recognize people's hard work and take the responsibility and protect them. That's the thing that I find fascinating about the Last Dance documentary. Even to this day, Phil Jackson will not throw his players under the bus. And that's what you want in a leadership position, is the guy who's just like, no, okay, you made this decision. I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to argue with it. I'm not going to say that's a bad decision because it's your decision, and I will support you in that. But we're trying to push to this common goal, and I think this is contradictory of that, but I will not throw you under the bus for doing so.
I also wanted to say, hopefully we never have to talk about him again in depth, but Johnny Kashmere comes off like the coolest, nicest, smartest motherfucker in the shoot interview. To be fair, it seems like he had a lot of problems with missing dates and contributed to some stuff with their problems, but Kashmere in the shoot, man, he seems like the coolest, smartest dude who you'd want to hang out with and who really had a smart head on his shoulders.
And that is a perfect segue to add to all of Trent's drama. Kashmere was starting to no-show tons of dates from ROH, which would get him fired, leaving Trent in a bit of a pickle. Trent would have a non-CZW singles run in all of 2004, facing the likes of Samoa Joe, Delirious, Matt Sydal, Jack Evans, Colt Cabana, and he would even beat our boy Chris Candido for the USA Pro US title November 19th, 04. All that sounds pretty good on paper, but 04 was the year that Trent's personal demons started bleeding over into his matches and making them bad. We'll get into some more stuff later, but this is the start of the end for Trent Acid.
Nick is 100% on that, so let's say some happy, fun stuff before we gotta get into the crap. Because I didn't do this till last night, but I went back and watched all of Trent's 2004 single stuff. They were pushing him, man. They gave him so much room. I mean, they called him the king of the multi-person matches. I mean, there's Round Robin Challenge 3, 5/15/2004. Watch that. Trent looks amazing throughout some of these multi-person matches. He doesn't win this match, but he is far and away the fucking all-star. He does this spot where he uses Roderick Strong's back as like a launch pad to kick up off of and catapult himself into a drop kick. Trent would do this stuff that I only saw him do once throughout all the matches I watched, but he would throw in these things that just blow you away. He had a 4-corner survival and a 6-man mayhem in a Death Before Dishonor night 1 and 2, where he won both of those. I mean, they were putting Trent over big, man, and he looked fucking good. They even had, there was matches where he wouldn't start the match and the crowd's chanting, "We want Trent! We want Trent!" I mean, it's so fun to watch him, like, how good he was when he really felt it, because a lot of indie stuff sometimes back then felt like you could watch them doing spots or you could see them going through the moments, but Trent had an intensity and you could see him so comfortable in the ring because he was just, god damn it, he was fucking good, which makes so much more of what we're going to say sad. I need to put over the Colt Cabana match 100%. The opening comedy sequences they do, I lost my fucking shit. Find the Survival of the Fittest match. Please watch it. Oh my god, it's only 8 minutes, but it killed me. It was sad watching these matches because I knew what was coming, but they were really pushing him. But it's so sad. And he would do anything. The crowd loved him. CZW crowd gave him a lot of shit and he got a lot of heat, but most of it was, just angry, homophobic, stupid, rah! But Ring of Honor appreciated the living shit out of him, and that's what made it hurt so much to watch him, because he was killing, and then he was gone.
So Acid would lose his last ever Ring of Honor match at Final Battle 04 to Jimmy Jacobs. Shortly after, he would quit Ring of Honor. 2004 would also be the year that Trent and Johnny would start their own promotion in school, Pro Wrestling Unplugged, running shows out of the old ECW arena. Jake, you ever heard of PWU?
Yes, and actually, if you look at some of the old RF video in the Ring series, it's at the PWU school, and you'd see Johnny Cashmere and Trent Acid there as the guys in there teaching their students. And there's a couple of interesting faces in that crowd that are a little bit more known today. But yeah, there was like a concerted effort, like PWU is going to be the new promotion that's going to, run the arena, and it's going to blow CZW out of the water and blow everybody else out of the water in the indies. And I don't know, there was a lot of people trying to run big shows in the area. I think there's like NWA Cyberspace, Jersey All Pro is still a thing, USA Pro is still a thing. It was just a very oversaturated market in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. And then, like I said, 2007, 2008, 2009 was the most insufferable year of independent wrestling. There was no money in it. Nobody was buying any fucking merch. So it was just hard to fucking get any type of traction, any type of spots, any type of talent to move up, because the same talent at the top of the card in 2009 was the same talent in 2003. So the main events were a bit stagnant, but at the same time too, what are you going to do? Not book Chris Hero in the main event? He's one of the best guys on the card. Are you not going to book Low Key, even though it gives you a fucking headache sometimes? Like, it's just, it was the same guys that were there, because WWE was only hiring one or two indie guys, and they were usually giving them shit and then booking them horribly. So there was no forward progression. There were no European tours. Nobody was making legit money. So it was just a fucking tough time to start a wrestling promotion like that.
So in PWU, Trent's feuding with people like Homicide, Too Cold Scorpio, Devin Moore. He would win a tournament for their heavyweight title, and he even defended it against Balls Mahoney.
Trent would have his rare WWE actual match January 9th, 2006 on a dark match on Sunday Night Heat. Him and Bison Bravado went up against 3 Minute Warning. You probably remember him as Rosie and Jamal. They got squashed. I tried to find this match. WWE Network doesn't have it. All my Dive Deep torrent stuff didn't have it. I hope it's not really a dark match. Who knows? Maybe it just never got recorded. But I want to see Trent's only WWF match. But he had one, man. He had one.
In 2007, Trent Acid would make his debut in Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Jake, Juggalo Wrestling.
I've done fucking 9 other podcasts talking about my experience of gathering at the Juggalos, and just about every fucking Tinder date I go on, I have to tell the fucking story of being at the gathering at the Juggalos. Because every fucking Tinder,
you're picking some
because
interesting
every
women.
Tinder date I go on, somebody has to talk shit about ICP, and then I have to go, well, I was on stage at the gathering of the Juggalos, and then I have to tell that story, and then I have to talk about how Zane Riley might have murdered somebody with a bottle of Faygo. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I think it also needs to be said. Oh,
That's okay. Go ahead, interrupt me. Go ahead.
I thought you were done.
No, I was going to put
All
a
right.
nice little bow on it, but that's okay. Go ahead. I
a bow
know
on it, Dick. Come
the
on.
bow's already been undone. I'm
Oh
simply
my
going to
gosh.
take marker and write to and from on it and not put a bow on it. How about that?
What I was interrupting Jake to say, he would actually have a faction called the Young Altar Boys because he's a priest, so
Oh,
they
God.
need to be a little young. And they went by the names of Tim, Tom, Terry, and Todd. And Jake, do you know the story behind this? Because at one point on commentary, Violent J or one of them says, Trent Acid is one of the most hated wrestlers alongside Tracy Smothers here in Juggalo Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, I would check out. Tracy Smothers know how to get some fucking heat.
I also want to point out one of my favorite moments of watching Juggalo matches when at one outdoor show, Trent Acid gets a glass bottle thrown at him, and then after that, he gets a dead fish thrown at him.
It was also around this time the Backseat Boys tried to get the band back together, but Johnny Cashmere was right back on his no-showing bullshit. He even no-showed PWU shows, and that was his own fucking promotion.
Yeah.
And I would say around this time is when the documentary Card Subject to Change would start shooting. And if you never watched this documentary, it is a very close-up look at indie wrestling. And halfway through the documentary, they just straight up lose contact with Trent Acid, because this is when things completely start disintegrating for him. He lost his body. He's passing out in the middle of matches. He's showing up to work too fucked up to walk, much less wrestle. And that leads to July 13th, 2008, when Trent would get confronted by his longtime friend, Billy Real. They got into, I believe, a bit of a fight. The police were called, and they searched Trent's home. They found drugs, and Billy didn't want to press charges, but, you know, Trent had a few things on his record already. So between the assault, everything to go with it, Trent's getting hauled in. He's getting put through the court system, and he's going to be sentenced to 7 months in prison, but he did get released a little early, January 28th of 2009. And that's when he would show back up on the documentary. And he's in rough shape, man. He is not Trent Acid anymore. And there's some pretty fucking haunting shit. The main guy in the documentary, Johnny Falco, Jake, I don't know if you know him or not, but he has this quote on Trent: "The demons have a hold of him, and he hopes he'll let them go, or Trent will become just another statistic." And, you know, when Trent comes back, he's talking about his battle with drugs, and he's talking about how it's hurting his wrestling career, about how good he was, how good he wants to become again. And as you'll see in a second, it just doesn't work out that way.
Trent is very upfront about his fuck-ups, and just those quotes that cut into you bad of just Trent saying, "I turned into the person I said I would never be." And the toughest one for me was him getting out of rock bottom a little bit, enough to even be on camera, which I think says a lot. And then him saying, "Well, there has to be a reason I'm still around now." And that's just some of the most haunting, ominous shit in the world. Also, watch after the credits. Jake the Snake Roberts has a scene with Trent in the locker room where he tells him a story that Terry Funk told him. It's kind of convoluted. I don't want to get all into it, but it's such a good moment. I can't recommend the documentary enough, and especially watch the after credit stuff. Because, I mean, Jake and Trent talking about their own demons, man, you know they know each other, and it's like, fuck, why couldn't that get through to him?
Yeah, that's the tough part about this particular podcast is that, you know, when they see this pop up on the timeline, they're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, Trent Acid, the drug addict." Like, there's gonna be a lot of people that stumbled onto indie wrestling when they saw him at his worst and not at his best, and I think that's what a lot of people are gonna remember, unfortunately. And that's what's tough, and I think that's the whole thing that'll pop up in people's heads is that. And, you know, I think about something that Jimmy Jacobs said, and I totally agree with, because I saw a little bit of it very early in my time of wrestling in 2005, 2006, is that, you know, that romanticizing of you get a six pack and you drive down the road, brother, mentality. And, you know, Jimmy would talk about him and Zach Allen would go in a locker room and be like, "Who's got pills? Who's got pills? Who's got pills? Who's got pills?" And that idea of, oh, we're wrestlers. We get fucked up. We go to the strip club afterwards and we have a shitload of beers and we wake up the next day disheveled and then go into the next town. Like, that was the romanticized idea. And of course, if you're in Philly and wrestling at the ECW arena, which is like hallowed ground in front of, you know, 800 people once a month, you know, you feel like a big deal. You feel like a rock star, and you want the perks of being a rock star. And everybody's telling you to get the perks of being a rock star. And for the most part, most of those guys that live that rock and roll lifestyle, like, you think about when guys started like dying, it was early 2000s. You know, so it was just a couple here and there. You know, when Trent was being told to live that life of a rock star, it wasn't such a scourge that it is now today in 2020, or even what it was in 2010 or 2009. I mean, he was mixed up in all of that. Like, the guys that were the big rock stars were still alive, still doing it, still their lifestyles was romanticized, and that's what you're supposed to be. Is those guys are still here, and they did all this. the idea of guys just dying because of that wasn't discussed as openly, and he got caught in that tidal wave, and sometimes that's the thing that you get drowned by it.
So Trent is going to work on and off from 2008 to 2010 around the Northeast. He even hooks back up with CZW, who is now owned by DJ Hyde. I've met DJ Hyde a couple of times. Am I out of line for saying this? Kind of a dick.
Nope, you're right on point. I don't think the internet's going to crucify you for saying that, Nick. Just to let you know,
Yeah,
I think the internet's.
I'm gonna go out on a limb.
I think the internet's going to be okay with you saying that. I know how worried
maybe.
you are all the time, Nick. Of like, I don't want to say anything that's going to upset the internet. I think you saying DJ Hyde kind of a dick. I don't think anybody is going to have any objection to that. I think there might be a small minority of about 3% or so, but most people might be mad that you use the word kind of. So I believe that you were okay in having that opinion in professional wrestling in 2020.
I'm never concerned about what people are going to think. I'm concerned that a bitter wrestler is going to hear something from this podcast and pay New Jack to strangle you with a cord from a hairdryer.
Oh, fuck. New Jack, I love him. I love him to death.
Cool.
Let's make that very fucking clear. He's fucking great. I spent an entire afternoon filming him for sketches for his stand-up special, quote unquote, that I filmed. Which, if you have not seen New Jack's secret stash, I highly recommend. Highly recommend. Some jokes are very hacky, but at the same time, too, he did the time, and it was entertaining enough, and I applaud him for that. But I think the sketches in between were quite entertaining because he's doing it with taking Terry Reynolds to a soul food place, KK's in Atlanta, eating oxtail. I think that speaks to everything.
So mass transit deserved it. Is that what we're saying?
Well, if you said the N-word, I mean, I think you can kind of say he's a dick too. Like if that nugget is a fact, then I think most people would say he kind of deserved it.
So Trent's last match is going to be in the Juggalo Federation, losing to Too Tough Tony at Oddball Bonanza in a barbed wire, boards, and baseball bats match. That sounds like it should be anyone's last match. March 20th, 2010. Then it really starts coming unraveled. On April 2nd, 2010, Trent was arrested for possession of heroin. These charges combined with his previous charges really going to put the boots to him. He was sentenced to 23 months. In addition, court-mandated rehab. I think he got out while awaiting his sentencing. He had another trial set for July 13th, 2010. I think he was in rehab during this, so when he got out, same old story from comedians to actors to wrestlers. You're off the stuff, you go back, you relapse, you do the same amount. And on the morning of June 18th, 2010, Verdi was found dead in his Philadelphia home by his mother. And it was later determined that he died of a drug overdose. And Trent Acid was 29 years old. No way to save it. Same old story we've done on this podcast a dozen times. At some point, you got to kick the drugs. You're not 23 forever, man. Final thoughts on Trent Acid?
I kind of alluded to it a little bit ago that most people, when they see this podcast pop up on their timeline, they're gonna be like, "Oh, fucking Trent! I remember he was fucked up at a show, or he fucked up a match I was in, or he was so fucking strung out, or I was supposed to wrestle him, but he fucking was off doing drugs." Like, there's gonna be a lot of bad stuff that probably is said about him, and a lot of people that are in wrestling now probably had a bad experience because of where he was at in his life. So it was, to me, I think it was good that we kind of focused a lot more on his positive notes of his career and the earlier career notes, and remind people that there was a time where he was about as good as it gets when it comes to independent wrestling, especially in the Northeast. And there's a lot of guys that remember him very well. You're talking about the dream sequence. When me and Grizzly Redwood wrestled Ruckus and Sabian, they were calling over something like, and they go, "Oh, okay, well then we're gonna do the dream sequence." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fucking cool that you guys continue that
Aw.
on in their memory. And that was very touching to me that, Ruckus still remembers. I think a lot of guys that knew Trent very early on remember him in those good times. And I think even in the bad times, I think there are probably moments where he was a sweetheart to people, and the people are like, man, even though he had all this going on, he was still nice to me, or he was trying his best, or he was struggling. It's like when I think about my interactions with Chris Candido, who we did a very long podcast on, and when I got to High Spots and I told Michael Bakikio, the owner of High Spots, how much I love Chris Candido, he was like, yeah, the only thing I remember of Chris Candido is him just being fucked up and kept interrupting a shoot interview I was trying to record, or other people like, I remember at an indie show, Chris Candido was fucked up and he did this. I remember the good times of Chris when he was sober right before he passed, and that's what's tough. We've done a lot of these stories where guys die of drug overdoses, and they have these long histories of just being complete and utter messes and ruining wrestling in general. And me being a guy that's always been concerned with the show is more important than anything. Like I've had my struggles with alcohol. That's my addiction, but I never let it get in the way of professional wrestling. So seeing somebody have an addiction that gets in the way of pro wrestling, it's very hard for me to wrap my head around. But at the same time too, I can at least empathize and understand how you get to that point. And I'm thankful it didn't get as bad as his did. And it's sad, and I'm glad that we took the time to maybe focus on some of the better points, the higher points, and maybe remind people of the better times of Trent, because I worry that most people remember the bad stuff or only got the bad stuff. That no life is complete with just the bad stuff and just with the good stuff. A life is something that has a mixture of all of them, and you yourself have to determine, was this a good life? Did this person treat me well? Did I misunderstand him? Did he misunderstand me? And nobody's no absolute good. Nobody's no absolute evil either. There's very little absolute evil. It does exist in this world, but there's no absolutes. It's very, very hard to find, and Trent most certainly is one of those people that you have to reckon the good with the bad and make your own personal decisions.
Trent was one of those guys you can put up there with Sick Nick Mondo, where when someone just wants to tear down hardcore wrestling to its bare bones and be like, it's nothing but two guys fucking hitting each other with, sandwich containers and light bulbs and whatever they can get their hands on. Like, people like Trent and Mondo, put them anywhere. Put them in any federation in the world. You're going to get a good match out of it. Trent was very good. He was innovative. He was exciting. He could do it all, like top to bottom. And just another guy that got consumed. But, he doesn't have to be just another drug-filled wrestling tragedy. He can be an example of what not to do, because you get both sides of Trent. You get motivated, in shape, hardworking Trent Acid, and you get to see the heights you can reach if you would just be those things and stay focused. And then you also get the bottomed out, you're gonna die in your fucking bedroom, the horrible story, and you get to see what happens if you start going down that path. You have to get help, because they're eventually gonna get you. And for what? Like, fucking smoke weed if you want to get high. It's crazy. I don't know. But man, Trent was an exciting guy to watch. Brave as shit. Did not give a fuck. Was there to give the fans a show. Kind of peaked at the worst time to peak for an indie wrestler, as far as jumping to that next level. But man, I don't know too much about how he was as a person, but his wrestling, his career is not something to just gloss over. Like, check out some Trent Acid. Especially if you love hardcore stuff. He is one of the best to ever do it.
When I'm doing research for this, I'm trying to watch as many matches as I can, try to find little details. I watch the entrance for Trent Acid, I think, every fucking time. He has one of the best entrances. If I say ever, that sounds crazy, but just like in his time frame of all that, of knowing how to create something captivating with the Midnight Express music, his attitude coming out, man, and then the girls sticking the money down his pants and making out with hot chicks at the guardrail. And he would go all the way around. It was this full experience, man. It had so much to it. And I watched his entrance every time. It was so cool to start watching him in like 99, when you could see him doing these innovative spots, but they were really rough. and you could tell he was green. But then I would watch matches, 2000, 2001, 2002, and you would see his body change, and he looked like a fucking Playgirl model. But then you could see the fluidity and the intensity in the spots he did before, but they were crisp, they were believable. It was legit fucking inspiring and motivating to see, like, hey, you improve your body, you can change your life, and you can look better, you can make your art form better. And it was so cool to see Trent really improve before my eyes. You see it when I'm doing research for this, but for some reason with Trent, it really fucking hit me, man. He just, like, God, he was fucking good in the ring. He was believable. Like Nick said, he had no fear. There's so many of these high spots that I just feared for him, and I never saw hesitation. That dude would get up there and he would just fucking do it, and it looked like he died. And he had some knee injuries here and there, but God bless him. That dude would go all out, and I mean, I guess it's a testament to him, man. He did all those big spots with those big people because they trusted him, because he could do the dangerous shit and make it work, and nobody actually get hurt, but not get injured. And it just blew me away how good he evolved. He did so much cool stuff, just like I talk about how he made every moment matter. He made everything interesting. He made it captivating to watch him because he would play in that ring, man. He was confident. He knew what he was doing in there. We brought up Candido, so I want to put over another match. There is 3 matches of Candido and Acid. I admittedly haven't watched these yet, but it's over an hour. 2003, 2004, 2005 match. And I can't wait to check those out, so please, you do too. Underrated as shit. He needs to be brought up all the time in underrated wrestlers, because he could do it all. He had it all. That charisma, man. He had that charisma you cannot teach. He was natural. I really do think if he wouldn't have fucked up, which is so hard to say, but I mean, it's reality. He had so much talent. He could have had a big WrestleMania moment, as crazy as it seems. He had the charisma. He had the work ethic. He knew how to connect with a crowd and get either heat or tons of pop. It was just so fun to see him do what he loved. And this is the highest compliment I can give Trent Acid of how underrated and how much I love this motherfucker now. If wrestling ever gets brought up and I'm drunk and we're at a party, I will be so annoying and rant to you for 5 minutes about how you gotta check out Trent Acid. Because Trent Acid is the fucking shit. That's it. If I get excited and I ramble to you and it gets overwhelming, you know I love a dude. And that's how much I love Trent Acid, man.
All right, that is Trent Acid's 10 Bell Pod. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully this gives you some kind of break from everything that's going on. I know I've been distracted.
A little bit.
Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/10bellpod, or you know what, donate to something that supports Black Lives Matter. We'll be okay for a couple months if you want to send some money their way. Hop on 10bellpod.com and you'll find all our social media, both 10bellpod personally. You can listen to the episodes there. One time we're going to do a blog. I think we did one, so you can find that there.
Blogs.
Shit, you guys got anything before we get out of here? I will end on a hearty Black Lives Matter.
I will say my favorite movie of 2019, Just Mercy. That movie affected me in a way that I've never been affected, and that's saying something because I've seen way too many movies in my life. But Just Mercy, Jamie Foxx, Michael B. Jordan, it's free streaming on all the digital platforms. It exposes so much bullshit and soapbox, etc. But please watch it. It's my favorite movie of 2019.
To go along with Micah as well, using movies and art to change people's minds, I posted a very long Facebook and Instagram about this. And you know, people might criticize, well, why did you do this right away? I was like, well, you know, everybody was doing hashtags and black screens and copy and paste press releases on where they fucking stand and everything. And I just felt like it was very, I don't know, maybe because I'm cynical, I felt it was hollow. So I wanted to take some time to collect my thoughts and say something very accurately and tell the story about why I feel the way I feel and how I become to have formed those thoughts, because I'm more interested in saying something that changes people's minds as opposed to just crying out for a simple solution in a complex situation. And I shared a story of me as a child watching the American Playhouse story of Medgar Evers, For Us the Living. It's available to rent on Voodoo right now, I highly recommend that you watch it, especially if you have a young child, because that's what I watch as a young child. And there's the scene where Medgar comes home and Medgar Evers is murdered in front of his house while his children wait inside for him to come home. Affected me greatly because as a child, that was my life, was waiting for my father to come home so I could play with him. So seeing my worst fear play out on screen affected me greatly, so much in fact that I ran to my mother and asked them, why did they shoot that man on TV? And she just simply wholeheartedly said, because he's black. And that was the correct answer to my story, but that is still something I cannot accept even to this day. And that piece of art has informed my opinions going forth into life. And some of you may be like, okay, well, I'll just have my child watch Ghosts of Mississippi. No, that would be fucking incorrect. If you really want to teach your kids something, have them watch the first 15 minutes of Ghosts of Mississippi and then shut the movie off.
Yeah.
Because that's the life, the everyday struggle that most black people have had to deal with. So, and I think we all need to think about ways that we can change people's minds, people who are on the fence, because I think there's far more of those people there than there should be. So we need to get people over here and not just bombard them with slogans. I think we need to have actual real dialogue and make actual fucking change. And there are minor things that are going on right now. There's actually tomorrow as we record this, hopefully the vote's already gone in our favor, but there is a motion in the Charlotte City Council to defund chemical agents for crowd dispersions. I may not agree with 100% defunding of the police department because I have multiple reasons and conspiracy theories on how that could go bad, but I feel like a defunding of chemical agents in Charlotte particularly is a good thing to be pushing for. Also in that motion will be a review board. But seeing the video of what happened to a group of protesters where they were trapped between two parking garages communicates to me that the people that had access to those chemical agents did not exercise them with enough responsibility, so that needs to be taken out of the equation. And I think the responsibility for that lies with citizens as well as civil servants, and especially civil servants. And I know being a civil servant and a police officer is tough, but you're supposed to be in the responsibility position, and unfortunately you will be held to a higher regard. And that's tough, but I don't know. Those are the things that are knocking on my head, and it probably took me a little longer to get to some of those decisions. But I think it's important to have an exact idea of what we want changed. So we should have an exact, clear distinction on what we want done and what is the problem. And we should get past a lot of just the broad talk and get a little bit more narrow and change things specifically.
Yeah, well, Jake just inspired the shit out of me, so I'll say a little bit more about Just Mercy and just this justice system is broke from every angle, every corner direction. Contribute to the Innocent Project and the Equal Justice Initiative. That's what Just Mercy gets into. It's just the shit that's going on now is fucked, but every cardinal direction, before, after, all through the justice system, shit is fucking broke and fucked. And please contribute. Help out this fucking country.
And I'll say too, don't let the media fucking push their narratives on you. I've been to more than one peaceful protest during this. You know, I'll thank a cop for not beating the shit out of a protester without mercy, the same way I'll thank a short order cook for not putting his dick in my sandwich. But the Burbank PD showed restraint, showed organization, so it can be done. And they have spent the last 20 years doing reform, doing better training, and that shit can be done. That's why we're out here marching. And then if you want to focus on the rioters, you're focusing on the wrong goddamn thing.
All right, and then I pulled this up in the middle of this. Let's go out to Trent Acid's theme song. Let's go out to the Midnight Express song. Eh? Yeah, put those dollars in my pants, baby. Yeah, put them down in there. Yeah, yeah.
Quickly, what are your thoughts on Sony sex tape? Huh?
Hey, this is Micah for 10 Bell Pod, and if you want to make all my lonely hours and my teenage years of sitting in my room watching tapes somehow mean something later in my life, if you could donate to Patreon, it would mean a lot to me and 15-year-old me who dreamed of getting laid. Thank you.